So last July, when the Instax Wide 400 dropped, I took it around the streets of Manchester to test its street photography capabilities. And with the Instax Wide Evo now being released, I decided to do the same again. So with my DJI Pocket 2 for a POV perspective, I headed out on a chilly afternoon to test the camera out. And typically for Manchester, the skies were grey and miserable. Normally I find these sort of conditions pretty uninspiring for photography, but this was perfect to test out the Wide Evo's wide range of filters and lens effects, and turn average shots into great shots. The Wide Evo comes with 10 filters, and on this photo walk I mostly used amber, light green, monochrome and vivid, but here's the full list of filters available. There are also 10 lens effects to choose from, and here I mostly use the colour gradient, light leak, soft glow and vignette effects, but again here's the full list of filters that the camera has. What's really cool with the lens effects is you can control the intensity by turning the lens on the camera, so I had a lot of fun messing with this to get the exact look I wanted for my shots. I didn't end up using every filter and lens effect on this walk, and so I did go out again a few days later to get at least one shot with each. I also completely forgot about the 6 different film styles you can add, so in my second outing I added some of these, but more on that later. When I went out with the Wide 400, one of my main concerns was the flash being automatic, and in a street photography setting, this isn't really what you want. The Wide Evo corrects these concerns by having complete flash control with options for auto flash, forced flash or suppressed flash. I had the camera set to suppressed flash for this entire walk. The Wide Evo also has exposure compensation, which I made full use of, setting the camera to between -1 and -2 for most shots, before getting closer to 0 as the evening got darker. With these settings, my shots were pretty nicely exposed, and I did find that at 0 in broad daylight, the shots can look a little overexposed. A new addition to the Wide Evo is the wide angle switch, which I ended up using for the majority of shots. It seems like the wide angle switch being on should be the default setting for the camera, as the specs state that you get a higher number of pixels with the wide angle on, which also means a larger file size. It did feel when I switched the wide angle off like the camera was simply zooming, which does make sense, but for this reason I kept the wide angle switch on most of the time, as the shots just looked better. As an example, here's the same shot taken both with and without the wide angle option. The difference here is most noticeable in the lower right of the shot, where there's a fair bit more grain in the non-wide angle shot. So the lens on the Wide Evo has an aperture of f2.8, the shutter speed ranges from 1/4 to 1/8000th of a second with automatic switching, and the ISO ranges from 100 to 1600 also with automatic switching. There were only a couple of times where I noticed the shutter speed having an effect, and these were both later on when it had got darker. Both times were when shooting a tram, and I got a nice amount of motion blur as the camera will have been at a slower shutter speed at this point to compensate for less light. This did result in this shot, which is one of my favourite shots I took on the Wide Evo, and also matches my usual street photography style the closest. As far as the ISO settings go, I did notice a little bit more grain in some of the shots I took later in the evening as it got darker, but nothing too drastic. The amber filter does seem to add quite a bit of grain though, so if you're looking to achieve more of a film look, that's the one I'd go for. The rest of the settings and specs on the Wide Evo worth noting are the focus distance at 16mm, the shooting distance at 10cm to infinity. The autofocus options are single autofocus and face recognition autofocus. There are a few white balance options, though I didn't touch these and left it on auto. Finally, the camera has a self timer with options at 2 or 10 seconds, which does seem a little limited considering the Wide 400 self timer ranges from 4, 6, 8 or 10 seconds. It is also worth mentioning that with a microSD card in the Wide Evo, you do get higher resolution images, and of course plenty more storage, so I'd recommend always using an SD card, as I did for every shot in this video. So as I mentioned earlier, there were a few of the lenses and filters that I didn't try, so I headed out a few days later to get at least one shot with each of them. I also added a film style to each of the shots to give you an idea of how they look. The cinematic film style is probably my favourite of these. As you'll know if you've watched any of my recent videos, I love the addition of some cinematic bars. These final few shots weren't anything special, but a nice test to show off the remaining filters and lenses. I did, however, forget to set the date after formatting the camera, so having the date set to the 9th of January 2000 made me feel like a time traveller. But I also just think it's a cool idea to set an older date if you want to add to that vintage feeling to your shots. Finally, I just want to talk about the Wide Evo app, as this is something I was really impressed with. A new feature in the Wide Evo app is the Discover feed, where you can browse other people's shots and even download their settings to your camera. I thought this was a really nice addition and gives you a reason to use the app outside of printing. It's just a shame this feature requires you to post the shot to Instagram first and then possibly be selected for the feed, rather than just working like a regular social feed where you can post any shot you want. So the Wide Evo is easily my favourite Instax camera yet. It's the perfect bridge between instant and digital photography, and the wide range of lens effects, filters and film styles let you get really creative with your shots. It's also, in my opinion, the best looking Instax camera, and it's much more portable than the Wide 400. Overall, I would highly recommend this camera if you're looking for a hybrid between digital and instant photography. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, and go and check out some of my other videos. Also, go and give me a follow over on Instagram, where I post all of my shots. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.